I'd like to call to order the Sherborn School Committee meeting for October 13th, 2015 at 6:38 p.m. Thank you all for being here. First, are there any community comments? If not, then I would like to introduce Ms. Angie Johnson and Ms. Jen Goldberg, who are the CSA co-presidents.
So this is my co-president. Last time I had none. Here she is. There we go. And Jen's going to present for us tonight very quickly some of our initiatives.
Hi, yes. Like Angie said, I'm Jen Goldberg, and I just wanted to share with you some of what we're doing with CSA. We just finished we're finishing up the Genevieve fundraiser, and it seems to be that we raised between $3,000 and $4,000 this year on that fundraiser. We're down a little bit from last year, but maybe we'll get some stragglers coming in at the end, hopefully. Another two fundraisers that I have ballpark numbers for because they just ended on Friday. We do two things. One's a directory that we and one's called Notes from Home. For the Notes from Home, the numbers that I got today were saying that we grossed about $450, but some calculating needs to be done to see what we net on that. And then the other one was the directory, which we grossed about $2,800 on that, and we're waiting on also hearing on the net, depending on the final cost of the directories, that can change. As well as we have two fundraising events coming up. We have Karen Rogers is doing a mini family photo session, and as you probably all have seen around town, the 5K fun run, Pine Hill Fun Run is on this coming up weekend too. That participation is down from last year too, so if anyone wants to run, please sign up. As well as one other final thing that Kate Potter, who is on the CSA board, works with the MECO students. And they are working on an initiative with, it mostly affects the high school and middle school children, but they're working on very beginning stages of a fundraiser for the proceeds would be used district-wide. However, mostly with the middle school and high school students, given that there's an urgent need for money for transportation back to Boston for those students that want to participate in sports, any after-school activity. Their bus leaves at 3 o'clock to Boston and they cannot participate. They really don't have a ride home. So Kate wanted me to share that as very beginning stages of a fundraiser to raise money for transportation for those students who live in Boston. And we have several ongoing projects that Angie and I are working on. One being our CSA handbook, needs some revamping and updating. So we'll be working on that probably for quite a few months now to revamp and update that with current information about the school and about the CSA. Do you have anything else?
That's great.
Any questions?
Do we have thoughts about what the fundraiser might be for the MECO program or not?
Kate said it's at the very, very, very beginning stages. What they were trying to utilize, from what Kate shared, were there were two students who want to be members of the jazz ensemble, and they live in Boston, and they can't be members because they can't do practices and rehearsals and such. So they're thinking of trying to do some sort of fundraiser that incorporates maybe a night of music with the high school students, the jazz ensemble, maybe an acapella, like the singing groups of the school, and perhaps bringing in outside.
From Boston University?
Yes, maybe from outside universities to try to promote that.
May not be appropriate to bring it up now, but there's the Sherborn Arts Council, and if it's I would do with music, it might be worth applying for a grant.
Okay.
The grants are due like next week, maybe.
Okay. Okay. And
very soon.
They used to provide this transportation, and then for some reason it left. And so now we're trying to bring it back to these students who want to participate and be part of the school as much as anybody else, which I can totally understand, and I think that it would be a great asset.
Excuse me, who was it that provided the transportation before?
It was through MECO.
It was actually through DSCF.
Was it through DSCF?
Okay.
It was,
right.
And it was for, and so we're trying to raise funds to get that back. So
okay.
they can have it again.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, ladies.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for stepping forward and volunteering for the table.
Oh, you're welcome. We're trying to get back, because I know there's two left.
All right, so next we're going to do the report card presentation.
I'm delighted to introduce Jatura Lundquist, one of our fifth grade teachers and a curriculum representative. She is in charge of science curriculum. Jatura worked in collaboration with Heather McKay, our ELA coordinator, and Rachel Correa, our social studies coordinator, and Robin Mansfield, our math coordinator. And of course, together they cross-pollinated with getting input from all of our grade level teams. As you recall from previous conversations, it was our desire to update the content that we report on to make it reflective of a modern day standards-based report card. And also to bring richer conversation and a more proactive goal-setting opportunity between teachers and parents in addition to the written report. So Jatura will talk about the process that they went through to revise the content of the report card, and then we're happy to answer any questions.
So ironically, the standards we didn't change were science and social studies. We looked at the Common Core.
Oh, they want you to talk to a microphone.
Even though I'm loud?
People in TV. Stand up, people in TV.
Yeah, I hate microphones. We looked at the Common Core for ELA and math, and what we wanted to do was to report out in both teacher-friendly and parent-friendly language that matched the standards. So a lot of the language comes directly from the Common Core. Some of the standards read broader than others. We figure that it's an effort to not have teachers reporting on every tiny little skill. I think there was one report card that had them reporting on every aspect of reading phonics instruction. And we wanted to bring that back a little bit and then have the skills embedded within it addressed directly in the comments section. The packet you have is missing math in second grade. We do teach math in second grade. It's just not on this.
It's probably jammed in the copy machine. Sorry about that page.
But the other thing we wanted to do was to keep the language consistent from grade level to grade level. So a lot of the terms are identical, but they will mean different things at different grade levels. And if you look specifically in math, you'll see that there are certain skills within a strand that definitely build on the previous year's language. And we actually went backwards. We started with 5 and then worked our way back so that we were able to say, okay, they need to be here in 5th grade. Where do they need to be in 4th grade? What's that language look like? Kept the language the same, changed maybe the place value. I think that's about all I have to say.
You'll notice in both math and ELA, and I have previous report cards here if anyone wants to peek through them just for comparison. You'll notice that we now report across the math and English language arts strands. Yep. To make it, you implied that, but I just want to be super clear about that.
The math is broken down into operations and algebraic thinking, numbers and operations based 10, etc. So that it's within the strand from the Common Core. And that's true in reading and writing as well.
And the science and social studies curriculums will be looked at over the next couple years at Chickering and Pine Hill. But in that you'll see we report on the process, not specific content knowledge. So the content, not that it's irrelevant, it's very relevant for our teaching, but you'll notice that we in science, the outcome we're looking for is developing understanding of concepts and content, make observations and predictions, communicate information using scientific vocabulary. So that's common across grade level, albeit we will revise the units of study that we teach in science over the next 2 years. And we may add something specific to the design process or inquiry-based learning, or relevant to taking our science learning deeper. But at this time we didn't.
Well, and the new science standards have not been officially adopted by the state as well. So until those are adopted, we really didn't have a document from which to work.
So then part of your goal then is to expand, just because if you're looking at this,
I know.
the takeaway could be
That those aren't important?
Yes.
Yes. That's the way it does look, doesn't it? But they really are. And I think One of the things that we have to do with the way that the math and the ELA standards are written is they're very content specific as well as skill specific, and they're much more detailed than they have been. And even within this, we have combined and condensed things so that we're not reporting on every tiny skill, but on more broad categories.
And certainly the essential strategies, such as in reading comprehension.
Do you envision this being on Aspen eventually? Any timeline on that, or?
Our hope is that we will be able to open our parent portal for the second half of this year. It takes a while to develop a template. I intend to send the report card home hard copy mid-year and end year this year as we're educating and informing parents how to open that phase 2 part of the parent portal that we haven't done yet at the elementary level. But I'm hoping that the June report card will be in there, and we'll also send home a hard copy so that it's, while we're conditioning parents to open the portal, you know, it's a set time frame that they can access the documents. So.
And would the hard copy be computer generated or handwritten or a card?
The hard copies are computer generated now, so they would continue to be.
Okay.
The teachers fill them out in word processing
All right.
documents and templates.
So what do you see as then, how do you evaluate the effectiveness of these? And what's your time frame for that? You figure a couple of years, you're going to do something in it this year?
I see this as phase 1 of the revision process. Our specialists still need to look across art, music, and PE. And eventually we'll look at science and social studies. But I think the most salient information that we'll receive is from parents in terms of, you know, I heard a lot from parents that, you know, thank you for taking the time, teacher X, Y, and Z, to fill out the report card, but it's really the narrative that tells me about my child, not whether or not my child knows the TH brothers on a phonics assessment. So I am sure in formal and informal ways we'll seek parent feedback. Obviously what's essential and what's our task is to communicate with parents and guardians about student progress. And we want to do that as effectively as possible. So as mentioned and tied into this, our parent-teacher conferences that have historically been in December, our teachers felt that was too far into the school year, and it became a conversation more about the report card, which we hope is a reflection of the child's progress. We want a more authentic conversation, a more open conversation where teachers are clear in communicating with parents and working with parents to establish specific learning goals for students around areas where challenge is warranted, around areas where perhaps some intervention is warranted, around areas where there's opportunity to enhance learning style strengths and hopes and dreams. And so our fall parent-teacher conferences have been moved to next week, the 3rd and 4th weeks in October, and we are aligned with Chickering School in that. And then we'll do a written report in June. We'll do January and June, and we'll do another face-to-face parent conference by design in the March timeframe to review progress overall and certainly speak to those specific goals that were targeted for specific students. So I do see it as an ongoing process. I think that we're always revising and tweaking in ways I hope that don't rock the boat, but that make richer and clearer what children know and are able to do at each grade level.
Sounds good.
So I have a question. Is there any thought or any rationale or any benefit to doing the same thing at Chickering as well, or is this only happening here at Pine Hill? And then the extension to that, the second part of the question, which I think is really the even more important part, is when they get into the middle school and high school, what kind of an assessment are they providing? I just don't know the answer to that. What kind of assessment are they providing so that if it suddenly totally changes and you have a standards base and then you have some other form of assessment there, are we preparing them for the right assessment tool?
And our assistant superintendent will eloquently speak to your thoughtful questions.
So 2 years ago, Chickering moved towards a more standards-based approach to their report card, and those were published last year. So they're not directly aligned, but they're aligned to the standards and what both schools felt were important to include on that. The assessments are becoming more and more streamlined between the two schools as we look at social studies and as we look at science over the next couple of years, especially science this school year. We'll be able to do more assessments that will then bridge to the middle school. And we're actually having those backwards conversations, 6th grade teachers with our 5th grade teachers talking about how do we know what students know and are able to do, understand and can explain, and how that plays out in the 6th grade. So it's a work in progress, but something that's uppermost in our minds.
Do you have any questions?
No, sorry. Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you for all the work that you've done and your team has done. Sure, appreciate it.
And the school committee's action research can be right through Mr. Embry with his customers at Pine Hill School. So
We'll bring your kids in. We'll ask them
Have them
what they
speak
think.
to it?
Yeah,
Sure.
that'd be good.
I wanted to point out, because I think it's important, at our upper grade levels, students, 4th and 5th grade students are included in the parent-teacher conferences in the spring. And a lot of shaping goes into that behind the scenes, but it's an opportunity for self-reflection and I think deeper metacognition. So,
Thank you, Jatora.
Thank you so much.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
And since you're on a roll, we've got the principal's report, Dr. Brown.
excellent. I wanted to highlight, I believe we touched upon this at the last meeting, and I wanted to highlight from the principal's report the status of the donated early childhood playground project. There's been a lot of collaboration and behind the scenes ongoing. It doesn't necessarily look like it when you look at the backyard and it's leveled with a drain right now, but tremendous amount of collaboration and the design work has gone on. Nancy White, our playground inspector and design consultant, met with all of the teachers last spring and related service providers that work with our K through 2 students, and our phys ed teacher, our school nurse, our language and motor therapist, etc., and tried to get a sense of their hopes and dreams for what we would want children to have access to. And she creatively designed a plan around that feedback and much more schema that she brought to the table. As she said to me after the meeting, we don't even know what we're asking for. There's so much new innovation in playground exploration and play equipment. So we worked in collaboration with the department, the Sherborn DPW, and they helped clear the old equipment and get the drainage work to a place where we could then schedule playground installation. Otherwise, that would have been a huge holdup for our installation. So we're very, very appreciative to the Sherborn DPW for expediting that. A couple weeks ago, we had a site work contractor come in and prep the site and put footings and fencing around the playground area, and we're on hold right now for about 3 or 4 more weeks. Equipment has been ordered and will be arriving, and we're trying to coordinate so it all arrives from 3 different vendors in a close proximity to one another, and then we'll be ready for installation, and then the final surface work will be the wood chip fiber. And we hope to have a ribbon cutting ceremony perhaps before Thanksgiving. But in fact, today at our faculty meeting, one of the things that came up, well, how will we give all children access to the new playground? Well, we of course prioritize for our youngest learners, but we don't want to be stingy and not let our older children have at it. We were very intentional that we have a play structure on our front playground that affords activity for bigger bodies. In our early childhood playground, we didn't want a set design of, you sort of go through those catalogs and order climbing structures and play equipment that come in packaged bundles. intentionally wanted things laid out in a way where children wouldn't necessarily go in a pattern or with a certain traffic flow. In the old days, we always wanted to account for traffic flow to minimize the chaos. But we wanted kids to have sort of open, creative experiences with sound, with physical activity, and with social opportunity. And Nancy helped us think through equipment that children could access as a 3-year-old and continue to access in different ways as they develop to become 5, 6, 7-year-olds. So you'll notice when we're fully installed, we've got some xylophone, life longer than this table, xylophone and bongo drums and climbing and swinging and log cabin and a variety of things that will give kids the sort of different sensory experiences. We're really excited. The playground will be fenced in and kids can access it from either the music end of the building or the kindergarten preschool end of the building. And the final step that the school district will take care of will be just to spruce up the ramp that you probably didn't even know was back there. It was overgrown with bush, and that will make sure that that's up to code for accessibility.
I'm surprised to see that you're not more excited about this project.
I'm so excited about this project. I'm a little jet lagged from the weekend. I'm really excited about this project.
Has the school committee, has this donation been voted by the school committee, or is it pending based after it's installed? And
we've talked about the donation. We've not asked you to accept it. We didn't want you to accept a monetary donation. We designed it in that you would accept a gift of a playground, and there's efficiencies around doing it that way.
Okay.
So we'll perhaps by the next meeting be able to ask you to accept a playground and come. Does anyone have those really big scissors for ribbon cutting?
I'm sure we can find some. Did you have other things you wanted to cover? Or was that...
No, I think everything else. Lots of professional development and field trips and CSA enrichment programs have started, and they're highlighted in the report. So thank you.
All right. Thank you. Dr. Ledoux?
I just wanted to bring your attention to the ongoing work for educator evaluation. All of our educators by Thursday will have set 2 student learning goals and 1 professional practice goal. Rich discussions with their evaluators on what they'll do in order to assess student learning, I'm sure connected to how they'll document student progress on the report card. And our QPOs, our qualified peer observers, for those of you who followed us last year, are underway. They're matched and they're working with their educator. That's year 1 of a 2-year observation, peer observation. So they're in doing great work. And for professional development, I do note there the K-5 science initiative across Chickering and Pine Hill, looking at science inquiry, and the grade levels will get together numerous times throughout the school year to talk about what inquiry in science looks like, which I think is a great place for us to start. The DESE is alleged, I use that word, to be voting on these Massachusetts DESE science standards in January. We'll see. But they haven't been voted yet. But the draft is out, and we're reasonably assured that those will be the standards that do go forward. That's it.
Just one quick question. Of the QPOs, how many teachers have opted for the QPO? So how many teachers are being QPO'd?
QPO'd, that's a verb now. I did not look at the numbers, but I do believe any educator who was eligible for that plan chose to participate. There were probably a few who did not. So across the district, we're able to, with the semester approach instead of the full year approach, accommodate every educator who wished to be paired with a QPO. So we had enough QPOs to go around, so to speak. The next cohort will be trained from January to May, and we're hoping to train a similar amount of people so that we can go to the original thought of a full year model paired with their qualified peer observer.
At Pine Hill, there are 13 educators being QPO'd by 4 QPOs at a building-based model.
Very successful.
Good. It's a great program.
It is.
Thank you. So now she's not listed on the agenda, but Terry Green. Please, thank you.
So I just wanted to highlight a couple of things that are happening in special education in Sherborn.
Terry, can I interrupt for 1 second? I'm sorry. Just to clarify, so Terry's report was in the communications section of your packet?
Oh, right.
So if you
I
go to
apologize. I didn't
the,
fill that in. Oh, that's,
it's actually item 12.
yep, and it's the third one down.
Right. Sorry about that.
Oh, no, thank you, Terry.
So there are a couple of things happening. One of them is very exciting and very new. Last year we had the opportunity for several teachers to pilot the Google Read and Write program. Teachers really loved it. We had several teachers at the middle school working with it that have used it whole class and in other ways. And in conjunction with our technology department, we've been able to get a domain license so that we will have access for all students to Google Read and Write, which is very exciting. So we're also planning to do some teacher training around Google Read and Write, how to use it in the classroom, what all the features of the technology are. It's a wonderful technology that gives students the opportunity to have any material that's available in the program through either scanning or other means. It gives them access to having that information read to them. It gives them access to being able to highlight information in text and form notes from those highlights. There are a lot of features that are really wonderful. We have a number of our special education students that use the technology because it's very helpful, but what we found is teachers were using the program whole class with all of their students, which is really where we want to go with all of these technologies. So we're very excited to have that domain license for all of the students to have access to that. That's been happening. We did receive notice that each of the 3 districts will be undergoing a full coordinated program review. On October 20th, I have a teleconference with DESE, and I will get the exact timelines for that. The last full coordinated program review that we did was the first time we did the online version, and the documentation was done online in the spring and the visit in the fall. I don't know if we'll have a similar schedule, but I will update the school committee as soon as I find out exactly what the timelines are from the DESE. So we should do just fine. Sherborn did really well with our last full coordinated program review and our mid-cycle review. So I expect they will do very well again.
Hasn't that been every year?
No.
Seems like
It
it's
certainly seems like it, but the full coordinated program review is every 6 years, and then there's a mid-cycle every 3.
Seems like every year to me also.
Yes. It seems that way. The other thing that I have for you in the packet and wanted to update you on is that there's been a request from the Dover School Committee to revisit the preschool tuitions. And so I have information in the packet around what our current tuitions are and some proposals. It's an approximately 2% increase in the tuitions. It is not mandatory that Dover and Sherborn have the same preschool tuitions. I think that it's a very good policy to sort of keep those consistent between the 2 districts. And so I provided that information for you there because we are going to be discussing this and bringing this forward for a vote at the next Dover School Committee at their request.
Yeah. Can someone give me some background on how the tuition, from a Sherborn budget perspective, how that goes? Does it go into the tuition payments? Are those reflected in the school budget, or is that back into the town? Goes back to the town?
It is the money is in a revolving account, so the checks do go to the town. It is kept in a revolving account.
And the preschool operation is generally independent. It's a somewhat separate entity from the school itself, isn't it?
Tuition, correct me, Terry, the tuition offsets some salary expenses.
For teaching assistants,
Okay.
things like that.
Okay. And did Dover give any explanation for their request for the change? Is there any background on that?
I think it basically was, I had given them the information that's on the sheet here regarding tuition ranges for private and public preschool programs in the area, they have felt sort of that the tuition is a little bit lower than some of the surrounding towns. We have not here in Sherborn discussed an increase in tuition in at least 3, it could be 4 years. So it's been a number of years since we've discussed an increase in tuition.
So it's even before the second section was opened, I would expect. It's been 2 or 3 years, or about the same, isn't it? Maybe 4 years since we've had the increase in capacity at Sherborn, at Pine Hill. Okay.
We've had our second classroom for 3 years now, and the last time we discussed tuition was before that classroom opened.
So it's probably good, it's about time to have it, it's probably time to have the conversation. Can you just, was it a smooth enough start for the program this?
We had a very, very smooth start to the program this year. We did very well, as we do most years. We do sort of a staggered start for our preschool students, so they students get a chance to come into the classroom, meet the teachers, see the classroom in smaller groups. We divide them into 2 groups, and then all of the students start together the next day. We had a very smooth opening. The classrooms are running wonderfully. As always, this past year we had more applications for the preschool than we had slots, so we did hold a lottery, and we expect the same this year. So.
That's good. That's good. And the transition to the new, and I don't know what the technical title, I can't remember what the technical title is, the new chair for special ed at Pine Hill has worked.
It's gone very, very well, and Barbara just commented earlier today in an email. Amy Curry has done a wonderful job of coming in. She hit the ground running. She's very, very experienced. She's been a great asset and addition to the Pine Hill group. She's getting to know the teachers. She's doing a wonderful job. We couldn't ask any more. It's gone very, very well.
Thank you. Everyone's good? Any other questions? No? We're good. All right. So Mr. McAuliffe, please.
Thank you, Ann. Given that Barbara and Karen and Terry included in their reports everything and anything I might include in mine, I didn't want to be redundant. So tonight I'm actually pinch hitting here for Mr. Baumhauer. So what we've attached is the FY16 monthly financial report as of September 30th. And the format looks a little different perhaps than what you've seen in the past. The status of appropriations report that you've received the last couple of years, I believe, was organized by function code, which this report is. And the function code is the actual description of the line item, except that the report you received lumped both the salary lines in that function code and the expense lines. So what we've done is to separate out by function code the salary lines and the expenditure lines. So what you have in the top part with the salaries, you'll note that all of our known salaries as of September 30th have been encumbered. And each line has been encumbered theoretically through the end of June. So if nothing changes in salaries, this is what we expect to expend. There are 2 lines that have not been encumbered, and I explained that in my comments. That's the substitute line and the professional development line. But we do expect to expend those. Typically, we would through the year. There's no way to encumber really the substitute line at this point, and that's paid and updated payroll to payroll. In the expense line, again, as the comments would predict, we would expect to expend what's in those lines generally by the end of the year, and you all know this. There are lines that have some balances, there are some lines that get overspent by a little bit, and I think in the past the expenditures, if we look out to June 30th, will be as close to zero as possible in the expenditure line. If you subtract out the substitute and the professional development salary line, that leaves about, at this point, $77,000 in unencumbered salaries. which is really reflective of the original budget and all of the various staff changes that have occurred since the budget was developed and approved in the spring. So our plan moving forward is we will create a monthly expenditure report, status of appropriation, as of the last day of every month. Because our schedule doesn't always coincide, meeting schedule, with all of those dates, we'll provide them to you as we publish them, and then we'll address them in the next meeting, so that you'll have an opportunity to ask questions or get more detail. And then on a quarterly basis, our plan would be to do a more substantial update, which would include revolving accounts, grants, and the like. So I'm open to questions. I'm certainly open to questions on the format. I can speak to some of the lines that are in deficit, if you'd like, as well.
I will ask them, do you have questions? No.
Well, we might as well take a look at the big ones.
Yeah.
Deficit.
Right, so
the SPED leadership.
So the SPED leadership is directly related to the comments that were just made by Terry. That reflects the hiring of our new team chairperson. Remember that position was budgeted as a 0.4,
Right.
because the plan at the beginning of the year, when the budget was created, was that the special ed administrator would be split 60% of their time in Dover, 40% in Pine Hill. So when this was brought to you at the July 30th meeting, we did speak to the need and the desired need to move that to a 0.8 position. I think the comments that you heard from Terry underscore how successful that has been for the first 2 months, and certainly we expect that will continue and to yield benefits. When we talked about this in July, we had projected an impact on the budget based on somebody being hired at between a Master's 5 and a Master's 7 on the salary schedule. That didn't happen, so the new employee came in at the top step of the Master's 15. So that reflects that, and that's a difference of about 40. Well, it's almost a full $42,000 that's there. We had there was 36,000 would have been remaining in that salary line after Marler was here for 3 months, and so the full amount of that salary line, given the 0.4 to 0.8 adjustment, the difference is actually that $42,000.
Okay.
That's that. The paraprofessional instructional assistant, so that's based on the need to have a full-time ELL instructor at Sherborn based on the number of ELL students that we have. That reflects the caseload.
There also, if I may interject, after our budget was established, the school committee awarded us the opportunity to hire an additional general ed assistant. And we knew that we would be able to offset that because we had 2 unanticipated retirements very late into the school year last year.
So we'll see.
So
these will be offset from other salary lines
That's right.
as we go through the year.
Yep. Correct. So even with these deficits, the unencumbered balance in the salaries, in total salaries, is the $77,000.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. And I'm assuming the school committee is for the superintendent search, is that?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
that's correct.
All right. I appreciate this. To me, a non-business person is much easier to understand, so thank you. I appreciate that. You have other things to...
Nope, that's it.
That's it?
That's it for me.
You were easy tonight. All right, so now we're going to go to the MCAS reports. Barbara, I'm trying to...
We're
click,
gonna
and I'm
push
gonna
button,
sort of speak
unless
to it.
Katie wants to.
All right, so then I should introduce you. Mr. Rigordi is going to speak to this. Thank you.
Hello, folks, good evening. So we've done the format similar. When we start moving through the slides, we'll look at the different grades and then look at some of the other districts that we compare ourselves to regularly and like to see how we're doing. And then at the end, we looked at something different. There were some questions that came up last year, so we try to respond to those. Some areas we were looking to improve. We have some evidence that looks like things are going well in some areas as well. So we'll click down. Let's see. Here's the grade 3 ELA. If you take a look, they go 4 years back. If you can see, it starts at 12 and goes to 15. So the good news about this, 92% of the students in third grade ELA are in advanced or proficient, which is a very good start for our young learners. Grade 4. As you can see, we're pretty much staying about the same. And one thing that we learned from last year, we had a grade we'll come up to later, and it looked like a big dip in a year, and it's hard. You're comparing students that are not the same group of students. So we're going to talk a little about a cohort later. But we've got, 82% advanced or proficient.
And just an insertion, remember this is the year where the long composition is part of this score, so.
Right, all right.
The rubber meets the road, it gets a little tougher for kids. Fifth grade ELA, this, again, and we're going to speak to a slide later on about open response questions, but this group, fifth graders, 92% combined advanced proficient. So here are some other districts. The big difference is you'll see it's denoted by park. So any of these towns that we would have here in the past couple of years I've been walking through this, that would be an MCAS score. Those folks took the park. So if you've got Dover there, the second one down, and then Pine Hill is there. So what we also did, besides, this is the combination of advanced and proficient, is what that score is, percentile score. But we did the average over the 4 years in parentheses for Dover and for Pine Hill. So if you see, the 92 we talked about, and then the 81, it's a little tougher when you have the fourth grade long comp, and it's a little more challenging for our students.
Do you feel like having the creating a sort of 4-year cohort work, and then using that as a point of comparison is much more accurate?
Well, I think it's to look over time. So there may be a year a cohort group may face some challenges, and the thing what we want to do, if that's the case, look at them going forward and see them make improvements out of that, and we'll speak to that later as well.
And likewise, there have been years where we've had exceptionally strong cohorts. So we want to be more objective about the information.
So,
go back for just 1 second, please. You're looking at that ELA, the first year of the written composition is fourth grade. Is there also a written composition in fifth grade?
Not till 8th grade, again.
Not again till
7th grade.
7th, sorry.
7th and then 10th.
But there are open response questions where students do have the right to respond to what they've read.
Open response is based on a 4-point scale, whereas the long comp is based on, it's broken down into grammar, is 8 points of that, and 12 points is the written part. So mathematics. So if you look across, it looks about level in this compared to another year of a different cohort. So it's 87% advanced and proficient in this group. Fourth grade. The good proficient went up a little bit, needs improvement went down. There are a few students in the morning, and those are the students we actually always want to get going towards the blue, and that's always our goal there.
So we'll say 3% on like 1 or 2 students?
I don't want to, there are less than 100 students in a cohort, but I don't want to, that's about right, but I don't want to get that close because people will be trying to figure out who their child is. So, 5th grade mathematics, this was cohort last year, that there was a 15% drop in the advanced and proficient in math, but this year they seem to have made some gains, but there are still some students who struggle in the math area, so we're working to meet their needs, every day, and this is just the 2 days that they take the math assessment.
Can I ask, I know
Yeah, sure.
there's been a huge, well, I don't know if there's been a huge increase, but there's certainly a lot of talk around like Russian math and other programs. Have you seen that that's impacted MCAS scores at all? Because looking at this, it doesn't seem to have sort of the last 4 years, or is that sort of a non-factor?
I don't know if it would correlate to these scores. Maybe it correlates to student understanding in general in math, if people are having tutoring on the outside, but it wouldn't necessarily speak to this assessment.
And I think the item analysis in math shows that it's mostly measurement and geometric shapes. So, and that's something that's conceptually difficult for students to grasp. So to me, I think when I looked at the item analysis, to know that under number sense, the scores were high 70s% answering correctly, even in the 80s and 90s, which was impressive across grades 3, 4, and 5, but that was one trend I didn't notice.
And last year when we saw that a cohort struggled a little, we looked at that item analysis, we looked at geometry, some work on fractions, so we had the teachers, they're doing the work anyways, but they took extra care to make sure that those areas, the students showed areas of struggle, they made sure they solidified their, conceptual understanding of those areas. So here we are with the math, if you look. So 3rd grade, 87%. 4th grade, this is that 77%, so it's a different group. That was improvement over last year. It shows that cohort last year just had some challenges with math. And 78 to grade 5. Science, technology, and engineering. We were pretty much, as a school, we're in the stratosphere last year. So if you look, when we have the comparable data on the next slide, you'll see, although the scores went down a bit as far as, combined advanced and proficient, overall compared to other districts, it seems like the science test was a more challenging test for everyone this past year. So I believe last year those two numbers combined, we were up near 88%. So this year, although it came down a little compared to other districts, we're still doing very well. They're right here. And this is the difference is there is no science park. So all the districts that took the park test, it reflected an MCAS score because there is no park equivalent for science assessment.
And remember, this assessment is a cumulative of grades 3, 4, and 5. And while our educators do a nice job of revisiting skills over time, it may be difficult for a student to apply something they learned in 3rd grade and remember it in 5th. We have that same issue with the middle school.
The good thing is we're increasing inquiry learning. Students will be able to use those skills with whatever's in front of them. This is something I pulled things apart a little bit. We looked at our open response scores for the past 4 years in 4th and 5th grade. So if you look, it's the year on the left, and grade 4 is in the box on the left, then grade 5. We have an open response average score. Then the difference between the state average score that year, I put it in green to reflect that it was, above the state average. So it looks like if you just look at the score, actually last year's 4th grade was 2.30, but it was 0.51 above the state's score. And if you look at the 5th grade, an open response average was 2.81, was substantially higher than it's been in recent years. And we're really excited about that. We've done a lot of literacy work. We've had a lot of professional development where just in the professional development the other day we were there and teachers were putting out the work of their students, and they were pretty excited when they saw where the students went from kindergarten to 1st grade to 2nd grade. they've gone from a few pictures and a word or two to really putting together big ideas and sentences and paragraphs. So I think this reflects our teachers working together in the younger grades so that the 4th and 5th grade students are actually coming as confident, strong writers. So there was some numbers. It's nice to see. Are we going to be able to see what we're looking for? And it seems to have looked that way.
The 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade teachers have shifted part of how we teach writing to what we call writing long. Certainly not like the long composition, but writing lengthier responses to their thoughts and ideas. And I'm hopeful that this is the momentum behind that.
And just it mentions on the slide at the bottom, grade 5, there was one thing you measured. There's so many things to look in. Your eyes get dizzy when you go in and look at all these possible scores. But grade 5, 100% of the students averaged a 2 or higher on a 4-point rubric. And that was notable. We usually have high scores, but 100% was very nice to see. And this is the same group that faces some challenges in math. So these are the cohorts. The colors are a little off here. Usually there'd be different colors, but you can see this is that same group we talked about last year. In the middle, in 2014, that 4th grade score, advanced, proficient, and needs improvement were all about the same percentages. And there was a small group of students in the warning category. So if you look at the group on the right, they've made gains. There's still, a group of students who face some challenges that we're supporting. And now they're at the middle school and they're, going to get differentiated instruction that will benefit them. So there is progress noted on that cohort group, although there are some students that still, we're going to follow and make sure they get the support they need. As a group, they're moving in a positive direction. And it was nice to see the positive change in open response scores. And we'll continue to track that and make sure it wasn't a one-year blip and they were heading that direction.
I know we'll talk at a later meeting to go into more questions that the school committee might have after having a sense of the district-wide performance across students. But I wanted to point out that a fair amount of summer curriculum work went on this past summer. I mentioned that at the last meeting. A fair amount of work was specific to Robin Mansfield, our math coordinator, helping some grade levels develop what we call a math workshop model. And you remember that language sort of parallels our reading and writing structure, so that we're trying to shift away from teachers doing a whole group lesson, mini lesson, and then students working in small groups or individually while a teacher circulates. What you would notice now in many classrooms is the structure parallels that of reading and writing. The teacher is providing a mini lesson, sometimes in a small group, so that they can more readily observe student math behavior and respond to it in a small group, while the other kids are rotating through practice activities or stations or centers. We call it different things at different grade levels. But so I just wanted to mention that we are working to shift our math structure to afford more and challenge and intervention for differentiated instruction.
That's great. Can I ask I assume that there'll be some reworking of the science MCAS to more closely parallel these changes in the curriculum that are coming, right? You're saying, Jatora was saying, have not been adopted yet, but will be. What's the lag going to be?
Do you know, Karen? Generally it's a year when the state adopts new standards, such as the most recent adoptions in math and literacy. The MCAS was aligned within a year.
It's actually 3 years. They'll do a crosswalk and slowly implement the new standards so that everybody will be on board, but they'll let us know which ones will be from the old standards to the new, which ones will be put into play for the MCAS for 2016, 2017, and 2018. And that is also due for a redo of the MCAS, so update that assessment itself, because it's been in place for so many years now. So I think the state is in flux, so it'll be a while before they'll only assess on what's common currently for several more years.
Well, can I just quickly, and as we're talking MCAS, Do you, either of you know ever heard anything more about park or not to park?
Yeah, I thought maybe I didn't
I
include.
think they're talking, they're gonna, I believe, make a decision in November.
It's actually November 17th. They'll actually, the board will hear the commissioner's recommendation on November 17th, and then I actually brought it, and then they'll vote on that evening. And then we won't have an implementation plan until December.
Hey, if it should go park, are we ready with the technology end to do it?
Yes, I actually have had numerous conversations with our Director of Technology, Anthony Rattaco, and if we had piloted park, it would have been at Pine Hill last spring, because they're ready. And we're going to talk about the tech plan supplement in a little while. You'll see how we're going to bolster the amount of devices here at Pine Hill.
There was a memo received from the commissioner a couple of weeks ago that frankly I meant to put in your packet, so I apologize. I'll send that along. And the commissioner outlines the steps and the dates and the process on by which the board will make that decision.
Any questions? So we'll revisit this, the MCAS, and have time, so we have time to digest a little bit more. If you have specific questions, is it okay if they send them to me and then I send to you? People have questions.
Yes, and at a later date, we'll curtail information to respond to your questions.
Yeah, the plan is at the November 10th joint meeting.
Joint meeting, yes.
This will be on the agenda. Okay. From a K-12 perspective.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to do an October 1st enrollment and class size report.
Yes, thank you. In your packet, there were a couple of spreadsheets. The first was a one-page spreadsheet that provided both a history, 9-year history, and 5-year projections related specifically to the Pine Hill School. And then the second was was the enrollment report and projections that I shared last week with the regional committee. So I wanted to make sure you have that as context. And when I share the Dover, the Chickering School report, I'll also forward that to you, so you have that as background and context. So once again, and I apologize, you have a report that looks different from what you've seen in the past. But I will tell you, this is a format that I have used for 18 years. It's something that, as a superintendent, I have been involved with in a great amount of detail in the 3 districts where I have served. And I have found that this methodology has served those districts well in terms of projections. It's not perfect. Projections never will be. But this methodology, what I strive to do in my projections is, if I'm within 3% plus or minus at each grade level, then I feel it's been a successful projection. So let me just quickly take you through this. The top half of this page of this worksheet represents the last 9 years of history by grade at the Pine Hill School. The shaded line, 2015-16 at the bottom, of course, represents the current year enrollment as of October 1st. The next section below that, by grade level, just identifies the number of classroom sections, the average class size across those 3 sections, and then the breakout shows the actual number of students in each one of those sections. The next box set of data in the middle of the page is the math and actually represents the methodology and the formula that is used to make projections for the next 5 years. You'll note that what I use is it's called the 3-year cohort survival methodology, and basically it's done by grade level. And if you look at the first grade the 3-year rate of 116% actually represents the 3-year average of the progression rate between the kindergarten class of 2014-15 to the current year, 15-16, and then the previous 2 years. So the formula is very simple. Takes that progression rate, which is the number of students that were in kindergarten and the number of students the following year in first grade, takes the each year's number times 3 and then averages it. And then what I also provide, just for information, I find this to be helpful in discussions around projections. I also provide you with what that 1-year rate is. So that 114% reflects the fact that there were 50 students last year in kindergarten and 57 students in first grade this year. So that difference between 57 and 50 is an increase of 14%. Now that doesn't mean it's the same 50 kids who were enrolled in kindergarten last year that are enrolled in first grade this year, plus 7 new students. That 7 is the difference between kindergarten students who may have moved out between October 1st last year and October 1st this year, and new students who may have entered between October 1st last year and actually September 30th this year. So in previous models that you've used, an in-migration, out-migration number has been identified but hasn't been applied to any particular grade level. It's been applied to the total projected number of students. Basically what has happened in this district is you've moved the same number of kindergarten students into first grade to second grade, and then you've added the in-migration, out-migration factor or number of 11. What this model does actually projects what the in-migration, out-migration would be at each grade level. So down below in the second half, if you see highlighted in yellow the projections, the one piece here that is frankly not very helpful in terms of the projections is the kindergarten number. And so I know that you have been using the census data, which I believe is probably the best data to use in making projections. Years ago, and still in use today in some districts, is the birth rate data, where it's the same methodology, but if we were projecting using that formula, if we were projecting how many kindergarten students we might see next year in 2016, we would look back to what the birth rate data for Sherborn reported. So the state and the town reports out on birth rate, the number of students born to residents in Sherborn, and you simply look at the historical average of those. So I have found in my work that the birth rate data isn't a very good projector. The best projection is the census data. Unfortunately, the census data, not everybody fills out the census data from community to community, but it's the data that this town has used, and I'll be looking at that data more carefully in order to develop some of those kindergarten projection numbers. But for the time being, what I do is just carry forward the same number of kindergarten students that was enrolled the previous year.
Interjection. The thing you should know, in this town, the town clerk hunts you down if you don't turn your papers.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great.
So they're probably pretty good.
That's great. No, so that will be very helpful. And actually over the years I've developed actually a formula for projecting 5 years out based on the census data, what the kindergarten numbers might look like 5 years from now. So I'm looking forward actually to getting that data and plugging it into some of the spreadsheets that I use. But just assuming for the time being that The kindergarten number will be about the same next year. We use the cohort survival methodology to project out. So under this methodology, we would expect that enrollment would be steady for next year, K to 5, actually showing a two-student increase. And just for fun, one of the things I did when I arrived in July, I set up this spreadsheet, and what I did was I did my own projections based on what your June 1st projections showed, and plugged those numbers, or last year's numbers actually, into my spreadsheet. And what's interesting is that, let's see, go back here. So last year's projections in Sherborn were let's not talk about kindergarten. You had that was a good number that you used in June, but your projections for first grade were 51. My projection was 57, and we actually enrolled 57. Your projections last year for second grade was 60. Mine was 67. We enrolled 66. There was a slight difference in grade 3. Your projection was 62. We enrolled 69. My projection was 65. The projection for fourth grade was 64. When I plugged it into my spreadsheet, my projection was 66. We enrolled 68. And then the projection for fifth grade was 69. I had projected 71. We enrolled 72. So it was pretty, you know, my projections were certainly within the 3% margin of error, which is what I like to see. But the only point I'm making is that, again, I've used this for many, many years. I've used it in districts where enrollment was declining. I used it in districts where enrollment increased every single year. And I found that the methodology works. There are years, and it happens everywhere, where there's unusual activity in a particular grade. You know, you can get 14 more students than you projected, and again, there are circumstances that cause that you just couldn't project. One of the things that is not included in these projections, which most school enrollment demographers would include, are things like looking at the number of building permits that are pulled in a community, the number of are there any new developments going on? This methodology does not include that. It's been refined based on my experience in Winchester, where there wasn't a lot of that going on. Winchester was a community that was basically built out. There were no parcels, but what we were experiencing there were a number of permits that were number of smaller homes that were being demolished, and much larger homes were being put up in their place, and so we looked at that factor. But so this is pretty straightforward. I wanted to share this with you. I'll be continuing to work on this. We'll review this again at budget time to see if there are any changes. We'll make adjustments as of November 1st, because the regional assessment is based on November 1 enrollment of students in grades 5 through 11. So that's something that at the regional level we'll look at. And then I'll be back to you at our next meeting with more information about how this breaks down. So these numbers include 8 METCO students that we have at Pine Hill.
Yes.
And then we'll also be providing you with special education enrollment numbers as well, and we'll do that as we enter into the budget season.
And 2 new students who just registered.
There you go.
What grades?
Yes.
If I had to
Third.
guess, I would say
Second and third.
Yeah. So are we hiring the 381 right now then? With those two, will we be 383 or are we 381?
They haven't officially started, so they're not in the numbers. They're starting in a week or so. Also, what's not factored in.
Information, sorry, starting with it.
Yeah, remember, it includes in-migration, out-migration, which we see is already happening. So,
The piece, just for us to be aware of, it's not reflected in our actual enrollment numbers, are friends and neighbors in our tech classroom.
Yeah.
All of the students at this time are able to benefit and do have in their plans inclusion. So there are a second grade classroom, a third grade classroom, and a fifth grade classroom at this time have an additional student for 2 to 3 subjects a day.
thanks, Barbara.
So keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Just
Good. And our pre-K numbers are not included in this document either.
So is now an appropriate time to ask about class sizes?
Sure.
And so you mentioned that new students is coming in 3rd grade, so that means there'll be a class of 24?
that is correct. We will, when our new family with 2 students starts in the next week or so, we will have 5 classes at 23 and 1 class at 24, not including 2 of those classrooms that have, in addition, inclusion for part of the day through our relationship with the tech classroom. So we have 3 grade levels that are high for Sherborn in class size at this time.
Because I believe I can't remember if it's the school committee or it's in school improvement plan, it's K through 2 is in theory up to 22, is that right? And it's up to 25 for 3 to 5? Is that...
So the school committee policy is that grades K to 3 would have 18 to 23 students per class, and grades 4 and 5, 20 to 25 students per class.
Say that as 4th and 5 again?
K to 3, 4 to 5 is 20 to 25. K to 3, 18 to 23.
So is that something that, because now it looks like there's a third grade class with 24, as that seemed to be the class size prior to one student isn't necessarily going to tip over the edge. But how are those classes going this year? So it seemed that the numbers are manageable. There have been some creative solutions.
We certainly have been creative in deploying our educational assistants to the best of our ability to strategically be placed in classrooms during times when teachers are doing small group instruction so they can maximize the benefit there. But certainly the classroom teachers and specialists, the more children, the more transition, and the less direct interaction with the teacher. It's, I don't know what the magic number is, but at some point it goes from being a proportional to an exponential kind of dynamic.
Just like parents and kids.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Man-to-man, from man-to-man to zone, it's different.
And our teachers, as you well know, are up for challenge and would certainly never speak negatively about any of the support and the conditions in our learning environment. But grade levels, teams that are, for example, 5th grade this year has lower class sizes than they did last year. And I've had many conversations with teachers that they feel they're really able to maximize opportunities to, quote, get to all students. So it's we're accustomed to smaller class sizes in Sherborn.
Comments? Questions? Scott, did you have something?
No.
Have
Have there been any, we've received move-ins, have we had any move-outs? Don't recall anyone saying anything about losing a student in any classroom, so I assume that hasn't happened.
No, not since the start of the school year. We had 7 children leave us,
Over the summer?
and
or since
they were
last
all
year?
anticipated,
Okay.
yeah. And then the 31 move in plus kindergarten, so.
Okay. So net 25.
And to Bill's research, we threw your data because the bulk of we had 5 children per grade level move in, and with the exception of second, third, and third grade where we had extra bubbles. So lots of 7 and 8-year-old friends and children.
It looks like our numbers and our projections are bringing us right up to our maximum levels. It's something we need to look at and think about during the budget time.
Yeah, that's when we come up to the budget guidance. That's something we should bring up, make sure it gets on the budget guidance radar. All right, thank you very much. So now to capital planning. Mr. Hall. You just going to present this, or should Mr. Hess present it?
So it was a late handout, but there is a document in front of you that attempted to give you a snapshot of where the planning committee is at this point in time. And it certainly, I think, is an opportunity or certainly a focus point for discussion. Some of these items can be explained in more detail, certainly, and there may in fact be an item or two that did not make this list but should have. And Frank, I don't know, does it make sense for you to pick up from here?
Basically, it speaks for itself, and I think that this is a rather rough draft. In other words, we were lucky to have, advisory and the 2 people from Capital Budget at our last meeting, so they know that this is a work in progress, and by no means finished. And some of these items, we're still getting quotes and estimates on some of these costs because they are not put out to bid at this point in time. So we're still searching as far as that's concerned. But as we continue to meet, we will be adjusting these, I'm sure, putting some things in and taking some things out. And as we get more data, particularly there's something in here for air as far as fans and air conditioning in certain spots. And I think we're getting more data from the system you have that reads the temperature in every room. So we'll start to collect those because I know that when they went through this to middle school, they had some excellent data. They had more data than you'd ever want to see by the time they finished that at the middle school. So I think we need something similar here to bolster this. See what we need.
Just a quick question. On these of the capital items, how many of them were anticipated? I'm just not familiar with what the 5-year plan was before this. Are there new items on this, or were these all anticipated items?
In fact, to follow up to that question, I was going to ask if we can have a comparison of what the 5-year / I think it was a 20-year plan had versus what we're looking at. Not necessarily, numbers also, but also just what the line items were, things that had to be done by certain times versus what we're looking at doing, and why, if we're not doing something, why, and if we are doing something.
We're actually, we did that the last couple of meetings. We had a subgroup work on the actual plan and try to note what we'd already done, what we did ahead of time, what we were behind on. And most of the things on here are things that were actually in previous years that we did not get to. I think like the lift and the scrubber and the clock system and the windows. I think all of those have been mentioned earlier than we actually got to them. So we're a little bit behind the curve on those, and some of them, like gymnasium wall mats, which are TBD, those are not really on the list, but the safety need is there, and we can see an example because Chickering recently put thicker mats around their whole gym to protect against concussions and whatnot from the walls. And we have many open places where we have nothing. The ones we have are the thinner, old, hard mats, and so that's something that's new on there. So that's something we're going to have to update. We've been working on that in some of our subgroup meetings.
And an item that we had intended for consideration is replacing the cafeteria tables that was $30,000 estimate. We went through the report, as Frank said,
Yeah.
at tedium, and there's
Yeah.
a lot of things on the report that we felt justifiably fell within maintenance, not capital. So those items have all been accounted for, and there were some capital items, such as a fire suppressant system and others, that we intentionally put on hold. Other than that, we have a thorough assessment from the on-site report of what we've completed and what would be a next phase for safety or building improvement kinds of items.
Right.
There's nothing that we hadn't thoroughly gone through and discussed.
It
And
would
when
just
you
be
get to-
nice to see what that is, so we can actually have a document that shows that, the plan and what we're doing, what we're proposing, because if we're asked those questions, that it's not that a subgroup of the capital group knows what that is, but we all know what it is.
So can we put something on, post something once it's completed, once we've said we've done these?
Yes.
These are the things that we're
Yeah.
looking forward to next year. Because there are even some things they're saying, right, we're not doing it this year, but we're putting, because they have two pieces and we want to put both pieces together and we'll push it ahead in a couple of years. So when that's completed, we can post it and then everyone will
We
have
should be able
access.
to, going out a few years, we should be able to do that, yeah.
That would be excellent.
And when you get to the budget guidances, a lot of things came up that are in this on-site report. They don't care where the money comes from, and they're really maintenance things. In other words, they didn't really rise to the level of capital, but there are a very large number of things that need to be done when you get a building that's 57 years old, so that we'll want to look at that line item for next year.
Right, and the other two committees are experiencing that very same thing, where the on-site insight report for the region and then in Chickering, again, similar items, really maintenance items that are being shifted to the maintenance operating budget.
I mean, it doesn't make sense to borrow for these things when they're on a yearly thing that's going on. We don't want to add to our indebtedness if we can manage to get them into the regular budget.
But Frank, you'll be able to see that when the spreadsheet
Yeah.
is put together. Now back to George's original question, Frank Hess, if you can probably tell me if I'm wrong, but on the list that's in front of you, if you add cafeteria tables, 30,000, I think that it's fair to say the update of the technology infrastructure, perhaps the temperature control, air circulation, and the gymnasium wall mats have not been on any plan that we've seen previously. Is that right? Does that make sense?
Yes, but the technology infrastructure update is in different pieces in the on-site.
Right, there was a piece in there on that. In fact, there was a piece in there to update the whole PA and clock system for a rather large number, which we haven't done all at once.
And the cafeteria tables were not specifically in there, but furniture updates and replacement cycles in general were reflected. So, thank you, Bill. Items 1, 4, 7, and 8 are newer to the table for discussion this year, as opposed to everything else that we've talked about.
I'd just like to say the other thing I found that was challenging with the report, the inside-onsite report, was that because the way they broke things out, sometimes it didn't make sense, like to replace the curb and the bus loop in year 3, but then to redo the bus loop in year 8. So we've adjusted that, and so their numbers and our numbers aren't necessarily in sort of overall are similar, but not line for line, because we can't, it doesn't make sense to do that.
Is there any way we could see an advisory copy that on, just kind of what you're pulling that from, where you're saying how much?
Right, I can send it to you. It's
Okay, that'd be
electronic.
great. That'd be
Yeah.
great. Just
Right.
so we can share it
Yeah.
with my community.
Any other questions or comments? So we, in theory, potentially need to vote on this prior to the November 10th meeting, but we will see if
That's
that's,
the target.
if
Yeah.
that's the target.
Yeah,
So,
hopefully we'll have it more in shape by that time.
okay. So we'll know, and you'll be in touch with
Yeah.
sending out the fully updated,
Yeah.
hopefully before that. All right.
Just one last thing on the capital. I don't know if there's anything capital, and I know it can't be discussed here, but just to be thought about if there's any anything we should be thinking about at Capitol for security and safety?
Well,
Security and safety updates and upgrades and so on. So I just put it out there, not looking for an answer, I'm just putting it out there to just keep it in our mind and keep it thinking. I'd like to know.
right, I plan to attend the Public Safety Committee meetings tomorrow. They're meeting tomorrow at noon, so I plan to attend that, and we'll see what comes.
Thank you. So now the technology plan supplements review, and that will
Thank you very much. You're familiar with the format. It's the same format that's been over the past 3 years. And I'll draw your attention to sort of the overarching goal is to support 21st century learners, but also to increase and reflect that in the current technologies. So just as way of the format of the report, on page 3 you'll see last year's tech plan supplement. On page 8 you'll see the current year's tech plan supplement, and I'm just going to stop there for a brief moment because some of those action plans are underway. We're looking at, last year we spent some time thinking about what educational technology meant by grade level K to 5. This year we'll begin to develop some learning products and think about what are some apps and resources that need to be put in play in order to support those outcomes that you'll see students come home with. It's a brochure, it's an electronic website, whatever it is that the teachers determine. And we spent a great amount of time across Chickering and Pine Hill, another example of that collaboration and consistency between the two buildings. And that we're actually looking to enhance communication using the digital tools this year. And you know, the district has its Twitter account. I get tweets from Pine Hill. What other ways can we use Aspen? How can educators use Google Sites or whatever way that we're communicating electronic newsletters? So we'll do an update of how that's happening throughout the year. But and you can see how on page 10 how the funding was spent. But we're looking forward for 2016 and 2017. And you can see on page 11, we're going to look at take a state of the art of what professional development is needed for our educators using Diane Papatopoulos, who is our K-12 tech integrator, along with Roy Ryan and Rebecca Traceability in order to be able to support our educators in what's next. And we all know those technologies are emerging as we speak. You know, new apps I just heard about today. You heard Terry speak about Google Reading Right. That was an upswell from educators through our tech integrator. So those are the great things that are happening. We'll continue to do that. We'll actually more focusing on the students in this upcoming school year. What are the students doing with the technology, and how does that technology support them as learners? So it's really what are the variety of research and presentation tools, word processing tools. We're going to look to Google, but what are some of the apps that fit? How can the weekly computer lab classes teach the new skills to utilize those digital tools? And then revise the units of study. We'll actually embed in Aspen, where we're uploading our curriculum units, what's the tech integration? What does it look like? What are some examples for our educators? And you can see some of those curriculum connections. And we're going to continue to use the technology resources to enhance communication. Who could have known we'd have so many Twitter accounts happening this school year? Let's continue to look at that and decide how it fits with what's happening. I know the newsletter is sent electronically from Dr. Brown, and even the CSA's newsletter is sent electronically, because I'm not sure how those listservs. So this is where the rubber meets the road, the budget appropriation on page 13. We're actually moving to assure that our educators have a laptop. Currently they have a desktop that's tied to their interactive board. We're going to move to a laptop model for them. Those desktops will be repurposed into places where in the replacement cycle we need those desktops, but it'll give our teachers more mobility and ability to come together as a second grade team, look at the data from some of the assessments that have and inform the standards-based report card, all of those things. So that's where we're going to start, and that comes with the docking station. So we're doing that, and Mr. Ataka was actually looking at projectors that become interactive and wireless. So hence the infrastructure upgrades for the switches of the wireless, but you can see that Mr. Ataka has put forward to upgrade the wireless network to Arrowhead, and those are the access points, so that the robust nature of the wireless at Pine Hill will be on par as the other schools. You see some of the interactive displays, those whiteboards are failing. So Mr. Taco has found a solution for us that's going to work with the laptops, but also with the credibility of the easy teach and some of the lessons that are happening. And then we wanted to increase some of the presence of technology at the school level. I can't get over how much the Chromebooks that were purchased last year are used by students so often that sometimes they'll go out to the cart, I've seen it, and they're being used. So we need to make sure we have enough ready and available for students' use. So 10 iPad minis cases, those are K2 classrooms, and then more Chromebooks to replace the last netbook cart. I can't believe it's still on its own last leg. So you can see this line item at the bottom is larger than we usually have. It's usually between 40 and 45, but I wanted to give you the background of what's needed and how we're going to get to the next place where the assessments are given online, where teachers are doing more work online, as are our students, and that will be the focus for next year.
Okay, I have a question now that it is a larger number here,
Yes.
and obviously the minis and the Chromebooks and probably even the displays would be something that would be, you know, not a capital type of thing because it's a replacement of regular things that are used and probably have not more than a 5-year life.
Right.
But some of the wireless upgrades and infrastructure upgrades could collectively, you know, possibly be in the capital range. So I think we're going to have to see how the budget goes, whether these can be included in the regular budget, because some of those two items I think could possibly be in capital the way they are listed and structured and collectively just for infrastructure, as we included the front end piece in the capital.
Frank, related to that, I just made a note to double check this. I think we want to just double check to see if the 3 switches and the access points that are listed here, whether they're included in that infrastructure.
They are not.
Oh, they are
not.
not.
I
Okay.
asked Mr. Ritako
Okay,
that
great.
explicitly.
Okay, then that might be bundled with the 25 for the front end as infrastructure upgrades, I think, then.
But then
Legitimately.
yeah, and then should, in theory, while it would be capital, the technology infrastructure that we talked about in capital be included so we can see the full investment in technology? In the technology plan, wouldn't that be considered part of the technology plan?
Even if it's in capital.
Even if it's in capital?
Yeah, right, yeah,
So
sure.
that because then it's not really 58,000, it's, I'm not doing the math, 58 plus 25,000 more in theory.
Okay, that's all. I just want to make sure that we examine that, and depending on what the guidelines are from advisory and how that goes and what's going to fit, you know, with our other needs with the increasing enrollment, etc.
Also, the interactive displays, the smart boards, that's in it, those 5 are in addition to, and I can't remember the number that we funded last year.
Replace projectors. These are the actual.
Oh, we just
they
did
call them
projectors.
whiteboards, but that's not the correct term. It is an interactive display.
Interactive display.
Because you can actually touch it. It's a touch screen.
With your generous appropriation at the end of last year, we were able to replace all of the projectors in the building that were due or overdue for replacements. So they're not included here just because there's no anticipated replacement there for next year.
Okay. And then replacement cycle. And so the replacement cycle then for instance, for the Chromebooks, the iPad minis, of sort of looking ahead. We're saying that's about every 5 years or so? What's the lifespan-ish?
It is 3 to 5. We've actually been able to stretch them. I bet the netbooks have been around for that long, but we've been able to stretch them. What happens with the iPads themselves is they're upgraded so often that the apps no longer work. So the technology becomes outdated quicker than you would anticipate. And you can't predict that.
Okay. Thank you.
The laptops, docking stations, is that the full ask? Is that 25 the the full set needed for Pine Hill, or is that a partial implementation where we're looking to add additional laptops next year, following years?
That's correct. We would ask for additional laptops the subsequent year to complete the cycle.
This would have, if we weren't transitioning to laptops, we would have been asking to replace 25 desktops. That's what's on next year's replacement cycle.
Okay.
So now we want to make the shift to replace the now soon-to-be obsolete desktops with laptops. But that won't outfit every educator.
Okay. Right. All right.
Okay. Folks are good. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. All right. Now we're going to budget guidance. And this is an opportunity for the members of the school committee to ask for things to be included in the budget, things to think about in the budget. For instance, we talked earlier about class sizes. So could we run to see what it would be if for every class that's 23 or over, what it would be if we split and added a section, and then what the cost would be to add an educational assistant to each classroom.
Mm-hmm. You mean rather than have the staff member?
Meaning that, so if we went from 3 to 4 sections, what would the cost be?
Right.
Versus keeping it at 3 sections and adding administrative
Gotcha.
assistant and adding an educational assistant. Maybe they need an administrative assistant too, but that's. So if people have thoughts about things that they would like to see, now's the time to speak up.
Well, the other thing to add to the list, which I mentioned earlier, was safety. Things, safety upgrades, things that need to happen for that, which we need more data for, more information for, but
I'd also love to see what, if we, right now we currently budget circuit breaker at I believe 40%. What would it look like if we budgeted at 50 or 60?
Well, 70 is
70?
usually the most we get.
Okay, so
I mean, 70, if the state has a bad year, then we would have nothing for the new student that came in from out of the state or somewhere that was already in a substantially separate placement.
Was Hans saying at the last meeting about looking at like what the percentage received over the previous 2 years was, or on average, what you usually get for reimbursement from circuit breaker? Because from what we've seen from advisory's point of view, 40% is lower than it's ever been. Like it seems like a very low number to be budgeting at.
So Mr. Gowan asked at the last meeting if we would look at circuit breaker and break it down into a variety of different options in terms of perhaps, you know, what the different options are. So we are working on that, and we definitely will be providing a report for you that looks at circuit breaker in many different ways.
Also, I think that aside from what percentage you use, in the last few years, we've taken a lot of students that might have been outplaced and taken care of them in-house, okay? And so sometimes we don't qualify at all for circuit breaker, or if we do, it's a much smaller amount. And aside from that, then the students that aged out, so I don't think we'll be getting as much in the circuit breaker, even if you had a higher percentage.
Circuit breaker amount over the last few years has decreased almost every year because of the good job that the district has done in bringing students in-house. So, but we would hope that trend would continue, and there are I mean, numerous advantages to that as well, and you are saving on the budget by doing that every time you do that.
I know that we'd also talked about if it would be possible to create a fund, basically a cushion in case of move-ins for special education. I assume that will be talked about with the circuit breaker, the big package. Okay.
And if Ralph Kelly could, go over all the things you've talked about in capital budget, in the school building committee, and sort of note all the things that we see that have to be done that don't qualify for capital, and see what that would do to the budget if we were to include those things.
Are there any considerations as the FLES program continues to add sections? I know it's been a very dynamic, growing program where we've added, I think, changed the fraction of like point something to point something, and I know there's with the addition of the second teacher. Is that already captured for next year's planning, or do we need to do any?
So if I'm not mistaken, the plan, the rollout plan was to add a grade level each year
Right.
of implementation. So the budget planning process will include what the FTE costs for going into third or second
And next year we'll be going into third
to
grade.
third grade.
And our original projection, which of course is contingent on how many sections are across Chickering and Pine Hill, but our original projection was that we would increase by the equivalent of a 0.4 position per year
Okay.
across both districts, shared across both
Point four would
districts.
be all encompassing. Between 0.4 at each district or total?
That we, in order to roll the program up to the next grade level, we would need an additional 0.4 teaching time.
Just
At Pine Hill. Yeah.
No, across both
across
schools.
So
Across
point two is impacted on our budget then, right?
Yeah. The tricky part is that's not, do we add that to our prorated educators? Do we add a new person? Scheduling becomes very tricky in a 4-day-a-week program. So, and then there's some contractual things around that. But from a budget standpoint, the equivalent of a 0.4 for both shared across Chickering and Pine Hill.
Okay.
When the folks come up with things, they start thinking of things, you go home tonight, you're like, oh, I should have added. Shoot me an email.
Okay.
And
So do you anticipate a rough draft at our next meeting or not?
No, so the first pass of the operating budget
Right.
would be the December,
off the top of my head.
December 8th meeting.
Okay, so, but they like to have the budget in town hall, don't they, by the 31st?
Of December.
I thought,
That's what it looks like, yeah.
That's on our calendar.
okay,
So the first pass is an opportunity, as I understand it, and we're flexible. The first pass is an opportunity for the school committee to take a look at what's been drafted, what is being recommended based on the work of the leadership team, and perhaps the budget guidance that we're receiving. And then the school committee won't vote a final budget until after the new year. And that's been the case in previous years. So the advisory committee will certainly have a copy of the first pass. And there'll be an opportunity, it looks like, from the way the schedule has worked before, for the committee to have the January and February meetings to further discuss the budget, make changes, make tweaks, and then sometime in February you'll actually vote, I think, a budget.
Are we meeting, what was the date we set up, was it February 21st?
No, it was February 10th.
February 10th, okay.
So there'll be 2 meetings. There'll be 2 school committee meetings, and there is a draft of the budget planning calendar in your packet. But there'll be a January 12 and a February 9th school committee meeting. So certainly the budget will be discussed and worked on then. And then on February 10th, we're scheduled to meet with advisory to review where we're at.
And just sort of inside, we're meeting with advisory on the 21st. Is that next?
Right.
So,
Right, 21st, right?
Yeah, right,
yeah,
next Wednesday,
that's this time.
next Wednesday.
So, to sort of talk about what goes into that first.
Well, that's kind of a wrap up.
Yeah, so
To
be
wrap up
recap of
last year,
FY15, anything notable up to this point in FY16, and then talk about some
Comparing my agenda
FY17.
this week, and I am
Great.
you guys on. We have a few other items that are going to, for help potentially could be a huge long thing, so I'm going to put you up first.
But the main purpose of this is to wrap up of FY15 though, or not? Is that the main purpose of this meeting?
Yes, and I think there'll be discussion around budget going into, like just pretty much what you guys
Sure.
discussed, like
Yeah.
what are some big items that you're anticipating for 16, just so we're prepared for it when we see it, and the last thing the advisory wants to see is any surprises in budget. So.
And we're doing the regional budget as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
All right. And as always, if people have more thoughts, shoot them to me. We'll go from there. All right. Let's do the consent agenda, which is the approval of the minutes from September 15th. People have any changes? And if not, can I get a motion?
Maybe just 2 more seconds.
Okay.
I had a 3-day weekend. I went away to go do some leaves.
Could I ask a question about the calendar or not? Or is that this second or are we now next?
That's next. That's
Okay.
communications. This is just the consent agenda. You just have to vote. Accept the meeting minutes of September 15th, 2015.
Just, yeah. Yeah.
So can I be ready?
No, it's the one before that. It's around 12, so it's
Okay. 11's somewhere in here.
somewhere in there. It's a smaller packet.
So if we get through item 11, we can entertain questions under communications, right?
Okay, yeah. All right, so can I get a motion to accept the,
Move to approve?
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
All opposed? All right, thank you. All right, so now we're moving to communications, and you had a question about the calendar.
I just want to know, without studying in detail, are there any changes from past protocol or in this calendar?
Not that I'm aware of. There is still one date that we haven't nailed down yet, and that's the meeting with on the capital budget with on capital and advisory.
Is it customary to have the full day teachers professional development? I guess it's usually at Thanksgiving. isn't
You're
it?
looking at this.
Oh, you're looking at the school calendar. Oh,
I was looking at the other one too.
okay.
All
Mike
right,
and I are looking at the school calendar. I'm not sure.
Sorry. Yeah, so let me explain the school calendar. I had some comments ready for that.
okay.
So this is a draft calendar for you to look at. If you have questions, we'll happily answer them. The plan is to vote the 16-17 school year calendar at the November 10th joint meeting. So we wanted to make sure you had plenty of time to look at this. This calendar is set up following the same format that this year's calendar has been set. So you'll note that the first day for teachers is, first 2 days is that Monday and Tuesday, the week prior to Labor Day. Students would then come into school Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday that week. Everything else is the same with the exception of the dates for the 2 Jewish holidays as well as for example, Good Friday, and then there's a slight difference, of course, in the December, February, and April school vacations. What you have in front of you, though, is there's two options that are being proposed to schedule the one full teacher professional release day. The last number of years, that day has been scheduled on the Monday after Thanksgiving. So you'll see that. That's in a dark red color, November 28th. The other option under consideration for you to think about, we have a unique situation next year where Yom Kippur is scheduled on Wednesday after the Columbus Day, the Monday Columbus Day holiday. So, so the other day, a different day for the professional development day, full day for teachers, is perhaps that October 11th day. And so the leadership team has talked about that. The leadership team indicated that October 11th was an advantageous day for a number of reasons. Both days will work, but we're putting together some, I'll put together that feedback in writing from the leadership team for you to review well before the November 10th joint meeting. I've reviewed this with Keith Kaplan. The contract says that the school calendar will be reviewed with the Teachers Association. So we've done that. There was no, at this point, there was no strong leaning one way or the other in terms of the discussion I had, conversation I had with Keith. So that's what that's about.
Another question, maybe just a typo. For January, in the column on the right, the vacation would be December 26th through January 1. Okay, so the in the calendar blocking, Monday the 2nd is in red. So is that a return to school date, or is that indeed a holiday?
No, that is indeed when
so
New Year's is celebrated.
Okay, so
if it
school
falls
reopens on the 3rd.
Right.
I see.
The holiday falls on a Sunday, it's celebrated on that following Monday.
So that's a typo.
Or now that I look further, maybe I misunderstood.
School reopens on Tuesday,
Yeah.
January 3rd.
It's there, I
But
misunderstood.
the line above it indicates that vacation ends on the
Oh,
1st
sorry.
and it ends on the 2nd.
Yeah, it does, that's right. Good,
Spot.
good catch.
But I did miss the line, the January 3rd school reopens, so it's covered, but still.
No, we should change that to January 2nd, which we will.
In case you're waiting at the bus stop on
Right.
the
Yeah.
1st. On the
It's
2nd.
like-
The 2nd. Right, so not to the 3rd.
Yeah, so it should be January 2nd.
Right.
So we asked you to think about those two options.
All right. Were there questions about the budget calendar or comments?
One thing,
So,
Ann,
yes.
our meeting on the 21st, it says 7:15 on here, our meetings actually start at 7 now. So I think
Oh, good.
7:15 wasn't passed, but we'll
Great.
be at 7, you guys will be first on the agenda, so.
Perfect.
I would
So,
put that at 7, and then the regional school at, so I'd say 7:30.
Great.
Awesome. And we appreciate you coming
Yeah,
us
no
up.
problem.
Thank you. All right, so if you have any other questions about any of the things in communications, welcome to ask. Otherwise, let's move down to items for the November 10th joint meeting, and then the next time that we meet here, which is December 8th. Chances are that we will meet prior to the November 10th meeting briefly, hopefully to vote on capital, but we'll let you know if that's ready or not. We'll have to be there anyway, so that would only be maybe 15 minutes earlier.
So we'll
post.
the logistics will be, we'll have to, the regional committee will probably have to meet as well
Mhm.
prior, but we'll make that work somehow.
We'll clone you and
Yeah. So we'll have that covered.
Yeah, so Karen can come. All right. So we have right now, that's the joint, district goals for the joint. All right, so people come up with things you'd like to talk about in the December 8th meeting besides budget. Let me know. All right.
Safety.
Sorry?
Safety.
Oh, safety, okay, yep.
Might be an executive session.
Anyone else have things they want to add? No? All right, so speaking of executive session, so there's a need for executive session for the purpose of discussing strategy with respect to collective bargaining and litigation. The committee will convene back to the regular, can't we go to the executive session not to return?
That's what it says next, right?
Yeah. That's, yeah, it's on.
Oh, yeah, that says there. I've got another thing here.
Yeah, yeah,
All right, so
you can do that.
So then we will not return to open session. So I need a roll call, just a roll call. I don't need to get a motion.
Just
Just a roll call. Okay, a roll call to go into executive session.
Which adjourns the open portion.
Yes.
Yeah, it's separate.
Well, we can do it after that. Yeah.
Okay. So Scott.
Yes.
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 All right. So then we need to vote for this meeting to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye, aye, aye.
Aye.